Welcome back to part 2 of our discussion with Kim Marshall. When we left off, Kim and I were talking about the idea of curiosity and learning process as part of leadership. From Kim's perspective, the idea of curiosity is also essential when you're a teacher. He'll share more about that momentarily, as well as sharing some fascinating points that have not yet even come out in print, so you'll be among the first to hear them. Enjoy the continuation of the discussion.
Well, in the case of lecturing, which is a big problem in many secondary schools, teachers think they're college professors, and there, coming in, and the key word you used is curiosity, and I think that's a great frame of mind to come in with. But if you're curious and you're noticing kids dozing off, you're noticing kids being very passive, you're noticing kids checking their cell phones under their desk, then that's something you would talk about. And, you say, great lecture, you really know your stuff. And also it might come out, as the teacher talks. I've got this list of really good sort of open-ended questions. Did you get your lesson goals? How did that go at the end? Did an exit ticket or something? How'd it go? And, and possibly the teacher is picking up on, the fact that the kids are not super engaged and involved. Or not, and then maybe that's when the principal does make the point. There's a lot of teacher talk here, but tell me after I left, did that change, or what portion of the class do you think you were talking at the kids versus getting more back and forth or turn and talk or engagement? So I think here what you're asking about is getting into criticism, but you're absolutely right. You do not have to be an expert in calculus to know, and I've forgotten all my calculus, to know that the teacher was droning on and that the kids seemed, to be compliant, but not really sort of, and the real test, of course, is when you give a test, how do they do, which is another part of this, is looking at actual student results. And that's a whole other level of supervision, is, okay, you taught it, but did they learn it?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think, back to your theme of avoidance, there's a lot of avoidance here. People are sometimes conscientious about getting around the building, be conscientious about doing the traditional system, but do they really know what's going on a regular basis? And are they trapped in a reactive mode where they're doing email all day, where they're dealing with discipline problems, dealing with upset parents, dealing with this and that, and they're busy. Administrators are always busy, and you don't get bored in this job. But are they really cognizant of what's going on? And when they get a complaint from a parent about, Mr. So-and-so seems really mean. Like, he made this comment. I heard this actually from a Jewish day school in the Midwest of the United States just last week. A parent said that a teacher had said to their child, my second grader could do this. Why can't you? Now, just a really mean comment. The teacher was saying, my second grade personal child can do this. Why can't you? I mean, so when you get something like that from a parent, if you haven't been around the school, if you don't know what's going on, you're kind of blindsided. And so far better if you're out and about and maybe you heard something like that from a teacher. And as part of your thing, you said, did you say that? And the teacher, what the teacher would say probably is, I was so frustrated. I explained this 3 different times and this kid still doesn't understand. Why don't they understand it? And that's the beginning of a good conversation. Well, how did you explain it? And what's up with this kid? Do they have a hearing problem? Do they have a special need? So before you get hit with a thing like that, isn't it a shocking question? I mean, good grief.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So that really hits home for me. And I should just say that we need to be out there and in the classroom. What I find with a lot of the principals and heads that I speak with is that if they get stuck and they're doing that email, WhatsApp, text, we've just multiplied the ways we can do electronic communication. I know when I was a head, I was getting about 250 emails a day. I'm sure that's not gone down, but you have another 200 WhatsApps, another 200 text messages. Is that those people are completely depleted by the end of the day.
Yeah.
They're done. And they get, disheartened, they get frustrated. And it's not just about time management, it's about what you're doing. So you're kind of working against yourself when you let yourself get stuck in your office, because getting out there to the classrooms is what's actually going to give you the energy.
Right. The energy and also the insights to prevent problems. to intervene early and also to appreciate teachers and keep them in the game. But just one simple trick for email, and this doesn't deal with TikTok and some of those other things, is an out of office message during the school day. And I'm strongly encouraging principals, heads of school principals, to do this. And it's a radical notion, but a lot of principals are doing it. So if I email you, Barry, in the middle of the school day, and you're a school head, or school heads are a little different. I mean, they're dealing with external, so they may not be able to do this. But a principal could have an out of office message that says during the school day, like from 9 to 3, I'm in classrooms, I'm in teacher meetings, I'm in the cafeteria, I'm out and about the school. If this is urgent, here's my cell phone, or here's my assistant's cell phone. Call immediately, and we'll deal with it immediately. But if it's not urgent, I will respond to your email at 3:30 this afternoon, and I will respond by the end of the day. And so that buffers that constant stream of email. You do not want people to think that when they email you at 10 o'clock in the morning, you are at your desk and at their service. Email is asynchronous. The whole beauty of email is you don't have to respond right away. A text is different. Okay, I get a text. Okay, I better check what it is. But email is different. And part of this would be turn off the audible on your desktop computer when a new email comes in. Because if you have an audible signal, like a beep or whatever it is, that's telling you that you're treating email like a telephone. Ring, 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 got to pick it up. Whereas the email is asynchronous, and it may not be the same day. 24 hours is usually a polite amount of time. But do you think that would fly with principals that you work with?
So I think it would fly with a lot. I actually know one who, as long ago as about 16 years ago, had that out of office on his email, which I thought was great. Exactly what you're describing. I know some have actually moved from regular WhatsApp to business WhatsApp, which is a free, easy switch, because business WhatsApp lets you set an out of office. Mm-hmm. So they can do that on their WhatsApp as well, and are really messaging, I'm taking care of your child right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'll be happy to talk to you as soon as I'm done taking care of your child, which will be at 3:30 or 4 p.m. In the meantime, here's my assistant's number in case of emergency. It also helps the principal a lot, because I'll never forget the time I got a email from a parent about how unfair a test was. Now, I looked at my watch and the schedule. I was like, the child's taking the test now. They're still in the test. And so it turned out, of course, the child had gone to the bathroom, texted their parent. The parent had already emailed. It was like, this over-involved, hyper-connected parent-child relationship is not good for the kids. Mm-hmm. And part of the way we deal with that, the movement to shift cell phones, smartphones away from the school, lock them up, leave them home, do something, is amazing. But we also have a role as the administrators in saying we're not going to engage in that immediate gratification of responding. Yeah. I'm curious about the head of school piece, because you do have this slightly different structure in private versus public, where you have a head of school. Right. I know it's something that a lot of people are nervous about. Well, I was a principal. I was 100% education. Now I'm going to be a head, and maybe I'll be about 50-50, 50 internal, 50 external. But when I am that 50 internal, I'm supervising principals who are supervising teachers. How do I go about enhancing teaching and learning in that role?
Well, that's actually was on a call late last week with a school, a Jewish day school, where the head and 4 principals were wrestling with that very question. For example, should the head of school do many observations? What is the role there? So one of my big recommendations is the head of school does co-observations with their principals, assuming more than one principal, or even if it's just one, not every day, but occasionally. So doing what I described earlier, you go in together, you watch for 10, 15 minutes, maybe watch another class, go back to an office. By the way, don't talk about the teacher right outside the classroom. That's a killer, because the teacher can see you. Oh, they're talking about me right out there. I wonder what they're saying.
Right. And don't talk about anything else outside the classroom that makes them think you're talking about them either.
Exactly. Yeah, whispering to each other, not a good thing. But back in the office, then you're debrief. Okay. And the classic structure that I found to be very helpful is start by talking about all the positives. Okay, so we were in Barry's classroom. So what are some positive things he did? Okay, so good classroom management, good use of this, really good use of a whiteboard, whatever it was. Okay, get those. And usually there's 6 or 7 things. Even in 10 minutes, people notice a lot of positive things. Okay, now let's talk about a possible coaching point. for this. And so now we get, and usually there could be 3 or 4 or 5 of those. By the way, every time I present to a group of educators, I always show a video. And so short, and I have like 8 different videos for different grade levels, and they're all mixed. The teacher's working hard and basically doing well, but there are things that can improve. So they're a good sort of, and they're not boring and they're not offensive. They're just good, solid videos that I've collected over the years. And so then you got 3 or 4 possible coaching points, and then the question from the head is, so what do you think is the most strategic coaching point for this teacher at this moment in time? Well, this teacher's mother is having cancer surgery next week. And so maybe this is not the time when we're going to bring up this sort of very serious, more serious criticism. Maybe we'll go with one of the, quote, softer coaching points. And so that dynamic between the head and the principals, I think is a very effective one, because it's the head is watching. What they want to know is, do my principals have a good eye? Do they notice the right stuff? And then maybe even do a role play. Okay, I'm the teacher. Barry, go ahead. How would you handle the conversation with me about what we just saw 15 minutes ago in the classroom? Let's talk it through. And because you're really talking about honing social emotional intelligence, you're talking about wisdom about how to frame things. And so I think the head is in a great position. Now, should the head also do many observations? Maybe the head takes a manageable number of teachers, maybe the brand new teachers, maybe the ones in their field, they taught high school, science, maybe they'll take those on, because it certainly is good to keep your hand in. But back to the workload factor and the getting out of the office factor, you got to get down to a manageable number of direct reports. And actually in the school I was talking to last week, it was a very manageable number. Like each principal had about 10 or 12 teachers. Now that's a good number, because then if you do one mini observation a day, you're seeing teachers about every 2-3 weeks, which is not a bad thing. You don't want to overmanage teachers, but you certainly don't want to undermanage them. And I think now I had 42 teachers as a principal. So I needed to do about 3 mini observations a day to be able to get to them once a month. And I did that. It was helpful that I had an assistant principal who was doing a lot of other stuff. I should have delegated to her. I talk about that in the book. Why didn't I delegate to her? There was a whole story behind that, and she could have done it. But 20 to 25 teachers is sort of an average number in most schools, and maybe not in private schools. And that's manageable. That means like 2 mini observations a day. So, very concretely about a mini observation, we're talking about 10 minutes in the classroom, then about a 10-minute conversation, hopefully within a day. And then I advocate a short written summary. Barry, as we discussed, this is really working well. But you're going to try to use Kahoot to do a better check for understanding. And I'm looking forward to, just a very brief summary, which can be written in 10 minutes. So each mini observation cycle, the visit, the conversation, and the summary is like 30 minutes. Yeah. So can you do a couple of those a day?
I bet you can. And I bet they'd be your favorite hour of the day.
Right. Exactly. And you see wonderful stuff. I don't want to sound like I'm always criticizing teachers. Most teachers are in there pitching, really trying hard, and maybe they have a bad moment and so forth, but they're, and you see wonderful, wonderful things. In my travels, I've seen stuff that brought tears to my eyes. It was so wonderful. So talk about making your day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And look, I think that one of the things principals and heads miss is teaching. So right. Being able to coach is excellent. I want to just highlight a few of the points you made, which I think are crucial for the head of school. I get these questions all the time. So number one, co-observations. It's something people don't think about. Well, we're going to overwhelm the teacher. And to me, it's all about the transparency. Teachers know in advance, hey, the head's coming in together with the principal because the head's coaching the principal, just like the principal's coaching the teacher. And We're all in this together. The principal knows exactly how you're going to coach, and you're able to both get a sense of what's going on in the building, which heads are often criticized for not knowing. You're able to show your face in the building, which again, the typical head is trying to balance. I got to fundraise. I got to go out and meet this board member. How do I be in the building? Well, this, ensures you're there. And the last thing I've heard from heads is, well, I don't know how to evaluate the principal properly because I don't see what they're doing. Well, this is a way to see that. You're sort of doing a mini observation of a teacher as a co-observation, followed by an observation of the principal, understanding how they do their teacher coaching.
Yeah. And, most principals are fine. Again, I don't think this is rocket science. I think that, that most people can do this. In fact, can do it better than the traditional system, because think of the pressure of a traditional system. You got to say the whole 45 minutes, got to take detailed notes. You got to write it up. It actually gets a little tedious
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And it's so infrequent and it's so inauthentic. And it's a discouraging, it makes you cynical about the process. So I think people can do better with this structure. And sometimes heads do see things that are not good at all. One story is actually a superintendent in Massachusetts who did a co-observation with the principal. She was a new superintendent, and they went into a second grade class, and things were kind of chaotic, and it wasn't good. Even with the superintendent and the principal in the room, it was still not at all good. And so they went back to the office, and the superintendent said to the principal, "So what would you say to that teacher?" And the principal said, "This is a true story." The principal said that she should smile more. I mean, a complete failure to
Yeah.
grasp, what was going on. And by the way, that does raise another issue: is should the principal or the superintendent, or the head, intervene when they're in during a mini observation? Should you ever get involved?
Oh,
And
wow.
there's sort of a controversy about this. I mean, there's a whole set of charter schools in New York City where they routinely do what they call real-time coaching, which is the principal goes in, and if they see something they don't like, they actually take over the class and show how it should be done. And most people are shocked when I mention that, but it is a practice in these schools. And so, should you be a fly on the wall? But what if there's a discipline problem? Should you discipline a kid? Actually, there's a good story. I think it was a private school where a principal was in, and this kid was slouched. It was a middle school kid, slouched in his chair, not paying attention, kind of disrespectful body language. And the principal just kind of caught the kid's eye and kind of said, so they went out in the hall. And the principal said, pull your pants up. I mean, what's going on? And the kid said, my sister had this party last night and I didn't get any sleep at all. And I'm sorry. But the principal said, okay, yeah, but pull your pants up and be respectful here. So that's an intervention. And
Mm-hmm.
the teacher was probably grateful the principal did it. But then I think you would sort of minimize that kind of thing. You'd mostly be a fly on the wall, and then you talk to the teacher.
Right.
What was up with that kid? He was being really rude to you. What's up with that? And well, his parents on the school board or whatever. So,
Yes, typically that's the response, but it lets you sort of ask those questions as a principal in a way that, again, to me, this is worth emphasizing over and over again. And I think we do ourselves a disservice every time we talk about the Socratic method, because if you actually read Socrates' dialogues, they were arrogant, demeaning, paternalistic, always in a gotcha. I mean, I was philosophy and English major. So I did a lot of that reading. I was like, this guy's not a lot of fun. I would not want to be in his classroom. And it's because he knows where he's trying to get you somewhere,
huh.
as opposed to saying, like, hey, you're a professional. You've been trained. Let me see what you think and let's try and figure this out together. And that's one of the things that I actually saw. I mentioned I've had the first, second, and now third edition of Kim's book. I have a watch out for when the fourth comes because I know each one has a slight tweak and some advantage. But I've seen, tell me if I'm right about this, I've seen a little bit of a shift around the idea of coaching, versus, kind of moving in your first books from effective feedback to more coaching and more broader kind of teacher groups of coaching and focusing on that collaboration. So, assuming that I'm not making this up entirely, I'd love to hear about how you went through that shift in your own practice.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the parent texting about a test being too hard. Like one of the things is, okay, that's inappropriate, and the kid shouldn't have a cell phone in the first place. But what about tests? And one of the things that I've really woken up to is the power of what the test teachers are giving, the actual work they're giving, the worksheets they're giving, the homework they're giving, and spending, of course, getting into classrooms and seeing the teaching in action, but also looking at the teacher team. For example, does the algebra team, if there's more than one algebra teacher, do they give a common test? Do they give the same test? What's it like? Is it
Mhm.
too hard? What does it mean for a test to be too hard? That's a
Yeah.
and so I think getting out of the classroom into the teacher team meetings, into the curriculum planning, the backwards design of a curriculum unit on, Second World War, whatever it is. I mean, those are really important other aspects. So, I mean, you think of looking at teaching as the actual act of teaching, but then what are you teaching? And I think one of the big things I advocate, when you're in the classroom, is don't sit in the back taking notes like crazy on your laptop, like the course stenographer. Walk around, look over the kid's shoulders. Oh, what is this? A word search puzzle? Like, that's not very rigorous. Or a
Certainly not
wheel,
for 12th grade calculus. We shouldn't
right?
be doing that.
And that's one of my pet peeves is word search puzzles. And I used to use them as a teacher, and it's terrible. I mean, it's like a mindless, but it keeps
Yeah.
kids busy, and they kind of like them. But I think, again, looking over kids' shoulders during the class, but then looking at your teacher team meetings, what's the level of discussion there? The ideal situation you want to see is you want to hear this golden question in a teacher team meeting. Barry, your kids did better on that one than mine. What did you do? Where teachers are really, first of all, looking at the actual student work or a common assessment that they gave or the artwork or the poems they wrote, and really kind of helping each other out. And by the way, this is where ChatGPT and the AI can be incredibly helpful to teachers, to coming up with, I was sitting with a group of educators in New York City a couple of months ago, and we had everyone in the room. There was, the teachers and the principal were there. Get out your cell phone and send ChatGPT a specific question about a specific kid. So the principal actually put in, here's this ninth grader. He loves cosmetology and hairstyling and nails, but he's having trouble with quadratic equations. Give me some ideas on how to teach this kid. And just like that, in 15 seconds, ChatGPT comes up with a bullet point list of ways to use cosmetology and hairstyling, to explain. It's a marvel. And
Yeah.
so I think, so anyway, back to your question. I mean, so one thing that's really come out in the third edition, and hopefully this will be around for a while. It was 11 years from the second edition to the third edition, to get into the actual curriculum, the curriculum units, the curriculum planning, the lesson planning, the looking at student work, the analyzing data, that whole part of teaching that is, okay, you taught it, it was a great lesson, but did they learn it, and who learned it? Did the girls do better than the boys? Did this kid light up? That's a whole other thing. The results.
Yeah. Yeah. In my mind, the journey that you've made in your work is parallel to some of the things I've seen in Michael Fullen's development of his work, one of my other, major educational role models. And it's the shift from solving the problem of teacher supervision to solving the problem of how do you become a learning school? How do you become a school where everybody is engaged in making things better? Pedagogy, curriculum, standards, formative assessment. It changes the entire culture of the school.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. It's nice that you noticed that. I'm reinforced by what you said.
Amazing. So I want to thank you, Kim. This has been really amazing. If anybody listening to this does not have Kim's book, go on Amazon, get it now. We will also link it in the show notes, but you will be happy that you got it. It's about becoming a learning school. It's about changing culture. It's about getting the right things, the keystone habits into your day. So you're doing what you want to do and you're happy at the end of the day. And obviously, as always, you have thoughts, questions, you think about things differently. You can reach us on LinkedIn, Barry Kislowitz, Substack Leadership Lenses, or at our website, kislowitzconsulting.com. Thank you all for listening and happy leading.